So next up, podcast listeners, we have Parler CEO talks censorship. So Parler CEO John Matsy, I believe that's how you say his name, he talks about censorship and where Parler is because they have been deplatformed. And we have a clip on that. We're going to talk about this at great length. And here it is.
Google, Apple, and Amazon Web Services all agreed that our terms of service were acceptable. They never said publicly or anywhere, as far as I'm aware, that there was any problems with our terms of service and free speech.
So that is the case. So Parler was never really given a notice that what they were doing was inappropriate or improper. They were just wholesale deplatformed, right? So imagine that. Imagine being someone who has built up this business, and the assumption is that your company's servers and their website and their app, they're all good to go. And if there is an issue with the terms of service with Apple or with Amazon servers, then these companies, most companies would give you a warning because you are spending money with the company, right? It's not like you're getting these services for free, but instead the companies, Amazon, and of course, Facebook, and of course, Apple, they've all decided we're just going to cut you off completely and utterly. So Maria Bartiromo was discussing this very issue with Rick Grinnell. And this is important because it's a terrific interview. And Maria Bartiromo talks about German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who had her own comments about censorship in the United States. And she talks to Rick Grinnell about this. It's actually pretty fascinating and funny at the same time and scary. And we had that clip, and here it is.
In Germany, because this week we actually heard from Angela Merkel, who commented on the fact that President Trump was banned from Twitter. Now, there are reports this morning. Here is the German chancellor's statement saying, bear great responsibility for political communications not being poisoned by hatred, by lies, and by incitement to violence. This fundamental right can be intervened. And she's saying that this is just bad policy according to the law and within the framework defined by legislators, not according to a decision by the management of social media platforms. This is an attack on free speech. Rick, your reaction to what we're seeing in terms of cancel culture, Twitter. We have a tape of Jack Dorsey saying this is just one account, but this is going to be going on for a long time. And we are seeing lots of Republicans, conservatives' Twitter accounts being purged.
So that's Maria Bartiromo asking Rick Grinnell the question about censorship, but also quoting Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, who basically said, Angela Merkel said, well, it's the job of legislators to decide what you should be able to hear and see, not the decision of these large companies. I mean, talk about night and day from the United States, right? We're saying, well, these large companies can do what they want to do, but they shouldn't be able to collude. And if they're utilities, then they need to be regulated. Angela Merkel's saying, oh no, it's really the government's decision to decide what you see or don't see. And I think that's kind of fascinating. And we have Rick Grinnell's response to Maria Bartiromo's question to him. Pretty fascinating, and here it is.
Look, I hope that the Democrats and the Washington, D.C. media and big tech in Silicon Valley, and specifically Twitter and Jack Dorsey, I hope they're all watching and they see what they've done. We now have Germany lecturing us on our form of government, on how we are going after free speech.
So we're being schooled by Germany about free speech of all countries, right? Of all countries. We have to listen to what Angela Merkel of Germany is telling us of what people should or shouldn't be able to hear or say, and that government is going to make that decision of what people do or don't see or say. And we gave this example earlier about how Facebook bows to a country's demand and will facilitate government censorship. I just want to read this to you real quickly from the Western Journal. It says, Facebook announced Monday it has begun the process of assigning a legal entity in Turkey to comply with a controversial law governing social media companies. The law, which passed in July, requires social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter to maintain representatives in Turkey to deal with complaints about content on their platforms. By the way, the complaints will be from the government. The complaints aren't from individuals. It'll be from the government. So if, of course, Turkey doesn't like what they're seeing on Facebook, then they're going to clearly go after Facebook and say, you need to take these down because, they don't meet government standards. So Angela Merkel's saying the same thing. She wants the tech companies to collude with the government and to be able to control the speech. This is so dangerous, right? So we have two dangers at the same time. Mammoth companies that are in the tech space who have way too much power and authority and control too much of the information, and a government that in the United States, that if it were corrupt, like a Biden administration, could collude with those mammoth tech companies and then move forward and completely and utterly shut down free speech. So you want to hear an example, podcast listeners, of free speech that, is kind of an incitement to violence, but hasn't been taken down yet? So Alec Baldwin, the actor, said he dreams of Donald Trump hanging. He dreams of Donald Trump hanging. It's almost hard to say because that's what Alec Baldwin said in his tweet. And I want to read it to you. So here is from Alec Baldwin, his own words in Twitter. I had a dream Trump was on trial for sedition. And outside the courthouse, a noose was hung from a makeshift scaffold. The noose was made of recycled COVID masks. And it goes on. I had a dream Trump was on trial for sedition, and outside the courthouse, a noose was hung from a makeshift scaffold. The noose was made of recycled COVID masks. And, a couple people put, sometimes dreams can come true. And you look at this, podcast listeners, and you say to yourself, why is this still up on Twitter? If you want to know, in part, right? If you want to know in part why there are so many millions of people that are upset about this election and about the conduct of these actors and actresses and far left big businesses and so many others in the culture, the way they have conducted themselves in attacking Donald Trump on social media and saying things like dreaming that he would be hung. And then they're not deplatformed, or they're not given a warning, or there isn't that little warning up there that says, oh, caution readers, we think this might be, offensive to you. And therefore, it sounds to me like it's kind of sort of inciting violence, which is what the left is talking about constantly. And that's exactly what it's doing. And of course, Alec Baldwin, his tweet is still up, and Twitter has not banned him or Twitter has not suspended him. No, nothing like that. And so we have a real problem, don't we? We have big tech that is way too powerful. We have a government that is corrupt and that is all too willing to cooperate with big tech to help them censor as much language as they can, language that, of course, they don't agree with. And then we have the crazies on the left that are still on the platform inciting violence. And you wonder why the country is divided. Okay, and that is Parler CEO talks censorship.